Hello, and thank you to you all for coming back on time. So before we move on to our second session today, we have something completely new for you. As regular Protection Review conference attendees will know, we try our very best to make sure that all our presentations are balanced, informative, educational, authentic, and even controversial in parts, and we try to avoid anything that's too advertorial or salesy. But in this new section, for just 15 minutes of the day, we allow a company to announce something brand new to the market. And that's what we're going to do right now. So let me welcome to the stage Jo Throp from Krysalis.
I am so pleased to be here with you today to announce a collaborative partnership between Krysalis Consultancy and Guardian. This launch sees the introduction of a unique and brand new insurance service for critical illness customers. This specialist service will allow the insurance industry to respond to the unique needs of people living with neurological conditions. By working together in partnership, through our collective efforts, we will reach more people who desperately need specialist help. We are delighted that our first partner to recognise the value of this unique service is Guardian. So, what is the need, and why does Guardian's commitment to provide access to Krysalis' specialist neurological rehabilitation service matter? It matters because many survivors talk about feeling marginalised, unsupported, and misunderstood. For those who acquire a neurological diagnosis, the person they thought they were, living in their familiar and predictable body, has changed. The routine every day feels unwelcoming, alien, and new. For those living with a neurodiverse condition, feelings of acceptance and understanding can be unfamiliar. This new service for protection insurance partners is in response to an ever-growing need and gap in provision of consistent community-based neurological rehabilitation. A gap widened by a lack of knowledge and understanding of the needs of this group of people and deepened by the COVID-19 pandemic. This service matters because of people like Penny. Penny's husband George slipped on a newly laid tile floor. The consequences were catastrophic. He sustained a significant bleed to his brain that went undiagnosed for 3 weeks. The accident had a significant impact. However, NHS support was limited. They approached Krysalis for help. Our specialist intervention worked with George and his wife Penny, helping them to navigate their daily challenges, adjust and improve. Thank you for listening, and I'd now like to hand over to Duncan Mosely, Chief Operating Officer from Guardian.
And for us, this isn't about a product reveal. This is about hopefully a shift in our industry to start really looking at the impact that we have on customers, because we play a really vital role. And I suppose our challenge for us as an industry is to recognise we play a fundamental role in that wider ecosystem. Our claims teams deal with customers at a point when they're at greatest need. So we need to look at our claim service not just as a fast payout. Our claim service is about how we support the individual, because every claimant is in a unique position and needs unique support. And Krysalis is a really, really important addition to that service. So I think our challenge to everyone in the room is let's keep thinking about how do we really support our customers at point of claim, and how do we make life better for people. Thank you, everyone.
So thank you there to Krysalis and to Guardian for yet more proof of the power of telling stories to convey the value of protection. So with the big reveal now revealed, it's time for session 2, where we're looking at product development post-pandemic and the role of added value services. And for anyone in the room that hasn't noticed, in just 2 years, the world has changed completely. In this session, we'll be considering whether we as an industry have kept pace with these changes with respect to product development. Can we now look back on the last 18 months, 2 years, and identify what we got right and what didn't go as well? What lessons have we learned that we can take forward with us? If you're an insurer, an advisor, or a service provider, what do you need to be considering now? Do we know what we now need to do differently? Do we know enough about our customers' needs and how these have changed? Are the changes that we think we need to make going to deliver the changes that customers need and want? We'll also be considering the future of added value services as part of the product offering. And let me first be clear about what we mean about when we talk about added value services. We're referring to services such as second opinion services and virtual GPs rather than services like fracture benefit outside of the core benefits, often thought of as financial benefits. Long heralded as a real bonus, we can probably all remember conversations about whether insurance would become more about the add-on than the insurance. Are they living up to expectations? Do enough customers even know about them to have expectations in the first place? Do advisors know enough? Are added value services the key to proving customer lifetime value for insurers and advisors, a way to make relationships with customers less transactional? Or are they simply an added cost for insurers, added complexity for advisors, and sometimes added value for customers? Do we all make enough noise about the value that these services add? And if not, why not? We often talk about the need to share claim stories more often. What about stories where added value services prevented a claim? Do we hear enough of those? Do we collect enough data on these services to be able to tell these stories? Do they cause more problems than they solve? For some advisors, they are a great sales tool, something to talk about with their clients, to demonstrate how insurance can make a positive difference, a way to overcome the idea of a grudge purchase. For others, they can be perceived as a minefield, with service levels between providers varying, with access sometimes not being straightforward, with it being another thing to complicate a protection sale. Is it worth advisors mentioning these benefits to clients? Do the range of services on offer meet customers' needs? A lot of questions to consider there, and mindful that this is just one conference session. So luckily, we have some excellent speakers lined up for you today to tackle some of the issues raised and to start this important conversation. We'll hear 3 viewpoints from our speakers, and we'll follow this with a panel. So do consider your questions for when we get the mics out later. And without further delay, let me first welcome to the stage Robert Sinclair from the Association of Mortgage Intermediaries. Robert helped establish the Association of Mortgage Intermediaries in 2012. He looks after the day-to-day running of AMI and AFB, the Association of Finance Brokers, by lobbying government, regulators and other policymakers, liaising with fellow trade bodies and briefing the national and trade press. He's held a number of frontline sales roles in personal, private and corporate banking combined, and advises the Bank of England as a member of the Residential Property Forum. Please put your hands together to welcome Robert to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm not sure whether you'll think of me as a liar, a cheat, or a charlatan at the end of this. But what I would say is I already have imposter syndrome. Because I, as a mortgage expert, I'm going to talk to you about something that I am relatively nothing about in comparison to the vast majority of you in this room. However, I do have some protection in that I'm a consumer who has it. I also have some protection because in years gone past, 20 years ago, I actually recommended, researched, sold life, critical illness, and income protection, believe it or not, in one of my previous guises where I was acting as a chameleon, pretending I was a decent advisor. Now, the interesting part about the world I live in normally day-to-day is mortgages. And mortgages are predominantly a distribution-led sale. So most of the stuff that goes on is actually sold by intermediaries, by them researching the whole marketplace. Very much like part of the ecosystem in protection, but not quite the same. Because there's still a lot more direct sales in this marketplace probably than there is in mortgages. The other dynamic, which is probably also similar, is that in my world, there are 6 lenders who do 82% of the business, and there are 6 distributors who do about 80% of the business. So we have an oligopoly that's really powerful, but we also have 92 lenders chasing less than 20% of the market, which is really strange and shouldn't happen. So we have some strange ecosystem things going on, but also we have regulation, which makes the mortgage sale really complicated, really difficult, and actually, it then means the protection sale is an unnecessary add-on at the end that most brokers don't like getting close to because the compliance rules around it make them fall over a lot of the time. Now, we'll get into some more of the detail of this in a minute, but the other element of this is that our regulator at the Financial Conduct Authority doesn't like the way we've been doing things for a very long time. We've got consumer duty coming. We've got decisions about whether we're going to have to act in the customer's best interest as a fundamental principle or deliver what are going to be defined as good outcomes. How the hell you define what a good outcome is, I've got no idea, but they're going to try to do it. We also have the paper on fair value, which although it sits in GI space, trips over into the more broad insurance space. So all of these things are bringing complexity, never mind the fact we've got to decide whether somebody's vulnerable or not. And I don't think, and I'm going to say this out loud, I think the mortgage industry has done a really good job in trying to control distribution. Back in 2010 to 2012, they binned over 2,000 mortgage advisors because they just weren't good enough. They took them off panel, got rid of them. They are really clear that they only want good people advising on mortgages and measure them and countenance them and kick off people who they don't think are doing a good job. I don't think distribution in insurance and investments has got their shit together. And they need to start doing that because otherwise the regulator will take us apart for not doing the job well. So that's the back of all of this noise about all of this for me. And there's a last bit which I'll say, which is one of the 3 things that really worry me at the moment in the world I operate in normally, which will impact on your world. As of today, mass market builders are still building on floodplains, which you will refuse to insure in about 15 years' time. So we've got a shit show coming down the road still, because we as an industry have not got control over what people are still doing through planning consents, which local authorities give, that you're currently underwriting in your GI world, and we'll actually stop doing that at some point because it's too risky. And Flood Re won't touch them by that point. So there's all sorts of stuff that's still going on in our ecosystem that makes me worry and angry. And that is why Amy came back to looking at some stuff and wanted to do things differently a couple of years ago. And we recruited somebody to work particularly in the way areas of protection. And we've now done 2 viewpoints in a world that is about asking 5,000 consumers a lot of questions about how they view the work. And we've done a lot of work with Kevin Carr on this. And I'm really grateful to the work from Royal London and Legal & General supporting us on this. It's been really important. But what we've had from these 2 things is consistent messages out of the 2, and we'll begin to run this more and more and get into more depth in different product areas. What we have found, and this goes back to some of the trust stuff we were talking before, 86% of mortgage advisors tell us that they talk to their customers at IP, but only 30% recall the conversation. Mortgage brokers are shit at having good conversations about protection. It's a really strange place. You trust them, you think they could be great at it, but the customers walk away from it thinking, nah, didn't mean anything to me, doesn't lodge in their memory at all. That's not a great place for us to be as an industry. And we certainly, from an Amy perspective, have to pick up the baton and run with that. And that's the scary one. The only reason advisors brought this up is because they want more money. Now, Abby said something interesting earlier when she was talking about her world, when she lived in Australia. She talked about something where she saw a financial planner who talked to her about what her financial needs would be and took her through all the things from savings to investments, to pensions, to protection, and actually they did mortgage as well. That financial planner in Australia is not undertaking a regulated role. Believe it or not, if somebody did that in the UK, they wouldn't be doing a regulated role either. It's only regulated when you begin to recommend a particular solution or product. But we've got risk and compliance functions who have tied us up in knots for the last 20 years and stopped us having decent conversations with customers. So all of the things you think you might want to try and do and develop, we actually stop people having good conversations about, these are the risks you face, Mr. Customer. How do you deal with it? These are the things you can go and look at. And I can point you in the right place for fulfillment. And that becomes the regulated bit. We're not doing this very cleverly. And we need to rethink the whole landscape about how we get this better. Because only then, when we get the customer actually nailed into thinking about, this is the product I need to go have a proper conversation about, and we give them to a specialist who does it, will we actually have the right conversations? Because then you can build complex products at the moment. And I'll come back to why that's an issue at the moment. And those 5,000 consumers told us a new house is the real reason for triggering things. We are trying to integrate protection in the mortgage conversation at a time when the customer isn't wanting to listen. Because all they want to know is, can I get or keep the house, or how to get the cheapest price to get the house I want? And in truth, in most conversations where two people are buying it, one person is really sold on it in terms of the house, the other one is merely under pressure to deliver the loan. And it's a really strange dynamic. And the products are complex. And I'll come back to that in a minute. But this consumer duty will have to change the way that we think about things. Because this consumer duty is going to force manufacturers and distributors to think about, am I doing the right thing by the customer in the way I construct this? So all of you out there who have got different distribution channels would charge a different price to the same customer if they come through a different route, guess what? It might get difficult to justify that in future. For those of you in distribution who are sitting there saying, well, I think I can write something to say I can take a 30% loaded premium on this, guess what? That's going to be a tough article to write and put into your management committee, get it signed off by your board, and then be absolutely happy that you're sitting not on a pincushion. Because that's where we're going to get to quite quickly as we go through the next 2 years. Because if you're not there in 2 years' time, our friends in Endeavour Square will actually get off their arses and maybe do some proper supervision, and we might see some action on that. If I've been controversial up to now, I'm going to become more controversial now. I stood at a conference 6 weeks ago, and I started to talk about, for some reason, protection. I was talking about some of the stuff that came out of our research. And I had a discussion, I started to say, I think products in the life industry are too complicated. Now, the people I talk to in mortgages are a nice bunch, and some of them quite like me. When I started to talk about this, I could see the room taking no more notice than normal. The usual dull regulatory stuff I talk about. And I said that I think products are too complicated, and actually all the add-ons make it really hard to sell. Some advisors started to clap. In 12 years, I've never been applauded on stage in the middle of talking in this job. I thought, well, this is an interesting nerve. And my brain splits in half when I'm speaking sometimes. Half of it still thinks about what we're talking about. The other one starts thinking, ooh, I'm enjoying this. What happened then was I went a bit further. I said, I think that free add-ons are a barrier to selling because most customers see through the rule, see through the facade, and know it's not free, and they know they're paying for it. I've got more applause. I thought, oh, there you go. This is a bit weird. I wish I'd mined this vein before in my working life. What happened then was I said, in this area, it's really bad because if I go and talk to a provider and say, stop doing free add-ons, or make it actually a menu you can click from, I will be told by some, I can't do that because if I disclose the true cost to the customer for picking it, I won't be able to use the mass price I'm loading in there for all those that don't use it. Oh shit, that's not fair value. That's not treating the customer fairly. That's not acting in the customer's best interests. But that's the reality of where we are today. And believe it or not, advisors and consumers see through this, in my view, which is why selling this product is difficult and we need to think differently about how we do this. And that's not my vote. That's advisors, 600 of them, in a room, applauding me. They're your customers, if you're a manufacturer, about how you need to get the product to market. Therefore, this is a different thing for me. And also, we've made products complicated. Life's straightforward. If you die, you get paid out, unless you've committed fraud in the application process. Critical illness, we begin to get too complicated. Too many different types of products, no homogeneous structures between firms. You've got some common definitions, but geez, for an advisor, I can never work them all out. Yeah, you've got some good software around that helps with this, but it's still a price delivery outcome. Or, actually, the really big one in the world of mortgages, I'm standing there on a stage in front of my customer, and what I've talked to you is about, I can access 100 products, thousands of products from 100 different lenders out there, and I will find the best one for you. What's also happened in the world of distribution is that actually they've gone through a beauty panel and selected one, in some cases, or 5 providers and excluded everybody else. So I've managed to tell you I'm the best advisor in the world on mortgages, but when it comes to protection, I'm a bit piffy. How are we allowing this to happen? That's all it's about. So we need to change that dynamic. So if we don't change that dynamic, we will not get better at this. It's not about, this is the fundamentals of trust for me. It's about authenticity, it's about openness, it's about honesty and integrity. And we don't change this, it's about the product. Because unless we get the product right, the rest doesn't matter. And the pricing has to be part of that. And I've written on here, intermediaries need to take control. Well, and providers need support. Because I think, because fundamentally, very few of you as product providers are actually direct selling, unless you want to go back to that and want to take all the risks that go with that. We have to work out a way of intermediaries telling you and customers telling us what they want and need to do. And distribution needs to take lead, and firms need to follow. Manufacturers need to follow. Unpopular possibly, but I do worry that actually, with a world that I'm moving to, where the government, Boris in number 10, and John Glenn recently endorsed the launch of a 40-year fixed-rate product by a single lender by adding to the press release. I've never seen a politician endorse a product launch in my financial services life. 43 years. I've never seen it happen. He did last week. Endorsed Kensington launching a 40-year fixed-rate product. So if a product is launched for 40 years, and you get one bite at selling the protection, where are we now if it's not being rolled over onto another fixed rate every 2 to 5 years? Changes the whole distribution dynamic. Lenders are now using open banking to automate, and MCube are a really good lender of strapping in, nationwide are beginning to use more and more information to know the property that the person is actually going to buy, take their open banking data, and can make a decision often within 3 or 4 minutes. In your world, when are we going to get access to my NHS records? Because actually, if I give you access to my medication records on the NHS, I'll bet you the average underwriter will be able to tell within 5 minutes with a decent bit of software as to whether I was at acceptable risk or not. Let's get on with it. Let's start the negotiations. Let's get there. Let's get the EBI really motivated to do this. And do actuaries have too much control? Well, they would say no, but that's because they're still looking at their feet trying to work out whether they have or not. But they do not have too much control, but we need to work out a better way of working at the commercial risk versus the financial risk here. I worry in a world where we're talking about mortgages and we only allowed, because of the way people have interpreted regulation, to advise on protecting the mortgage instead of protecting the customer. And that's why we need to get away from this being very narrow and dovetailed into one dimension and actually having good conversations with customers about what their genuine risks and issues are and building products that work for them in their lives at the point they are in their lives, not in these simple silos that are homogeneous and straight lined. And the last one is, why does the customer not trust us? The customer doesn't trust us because when they get the disclosure document, they see how much the broker's learning on a 4-year indemnity. My membership will kill me. I've got very large firms who will look at me in horror when I say, let's move it to long-term trail and get off the acid at the gates of this whole manufacturing cycle and go the other way. Because I actually believe that looking at that commission number is why the customer says it ain't right, but in the fundamentals of product manufacturing and distribution, unless we change that, we will not get to a better place. And on that bombshell, I will say thank you for listening to me. I hope I'm not a total charlatan and have maybe a bit less imposter syndrome, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Simoney Kyriakou is our next speaker. She's an award-winning financial journalist and senior editor of FT Advisor. She's been writing on personal finance since the late 1990s, and when she's not trying to track and trace insurance scammers, she can be found tweeting at Moorgate Mermaid. Please welcome Simoney to the stage with a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Well, if Rob has imposter syndrome, I feel rather like my husband who walked into a press party last week at the canapes, drank the beer, dropped his mask on the floor, then realised he'd gate crashed someone's wake, walked out and then had to come back in again to pick up his mask. So Thank you, Rob. Hopefully you've set a very high standard actually for me to follow. Well, as the editor of a trade title, I do like to ponder the big questions. What do my readers want to see in 2022? How do I get financially fit in 2022? I just agreed with something Piers Morgan said on Twitter. Does my brain need to be bleached? You know, FT Advisor readers cover a wide spectrum from investment professionals through to protection advisors. So when we canvass their opinions and ask them what they think about stuff, we get a huge variety of answers. Specifically, when I asked them what they liked about protection, there was, again, a mixed variety of opinions. Some said they really appreciated the fact that protection providers had gone the extra mile during lockdown. Many of them had sought to increase or improve cover for their clients. But then some also said they had a really bad experience when it came to the claims process. And 2 advisors I've spoken to recently have had a really bad experience with claims processes themselves, not just their clients. When I asked about support services, what do you like about them, what don't you like about them, I've got a thingamajiggy here and I can go and press these buttons, can't I? Look at that, ding dong. So specifically, when I asked them about support services, some of them said, oh, these are really great. Do you know, during COVID, my clients were using the GP service, they were using prescription services. Another said, you know, I don't think my clients actually know much about this. And, you know, that touches on something Rob said. Are advisors having the proper questions with their clients about this? Are they actually discussing these things with clients? Anecdotally, and you know, we've reported on this in FT Advisor, virtual GPs, prescription services, mental health counselling did see a huge boost in usage as people turned to their policies when GP offices were just no-go areas during COVID. But despite this, I've talked to 2 life insurers recently, not just 2, I mean, but these are the 2 that I'm quoting. Despite last April's uptick in interest generated by the pandemic and people getting scared about stuff, we've not seen a significant cross-market uptick in IP sales or kick sales. Why? Do we need something new, or do we need to fix what we already have? So we've got 2 schools of thought here. We already have all the protection products we need. Nothing new will ever be invented. I'm not going to say who said that, but he was sitting near me. Right, so we don't need new things. We just need to do things very differently. Other school of thought, necessity is the mother of invention. You know, the way things are need to change. We might need new products. Maybe we need to do old things very differently. So, you know, let's assume that we don't need anything new. Let's start off. Let's look at what does and does not work. So what is working? Ooh, big green button. Here's Alan Lakey. Thank you very much for this, Alan. Let's look at Kick, for example. 50 years ago, people needed it, but it wasn't there. And then someone saw the need for it, and it became, as Alan said, the only insurance product that everybody can and should have. Now, if you don't agree with that, you can go and see him afterwards. He's just sitting there, okay? We'll hold him down for you. Right. But sometimes we need to see the need to realize that we need something new. I'm sorry, that's a bit needy before lunch, isn't it? That's just me, that's the way I am. But if it's true that we don't need anything new, then actually that shouldn't be a truism. But it is, I'll come back to that later. So what works? So we spoke to lots of different providers who surveyed advisors. What did advisors say they liked? 33% of advisors said virtual GP services add real value. Real value, okay? 64% of providers surveyed by de facto offered claim support services in 2019. 64%, and advisors said they really valued this. And according to AIG, there you go, heads up, where was Sue? Right. There you go. Hashtag smart health. 350 people, I'm not advertising them, by the way, that's part of the content. 350 people have had more than 900 mental health consultations in January to March alone this year. That's 52% of everything they got in 2020. So things do work. Some things don't work. This is also from de facto. Now, this is pre-COVID, and I really want to see the figures when they come out in 2022, because I would like to go back over 3 years and see what happened in 2021 and 2020. What difference does this make? Well, look, you got blue, not important to my clients. That's not a very nice thing for advisors. See, my clients don't care about nutrition advice. So you've got to stop drinking port, not on your life. Gym discounts, my office gives me those anyway. I don't know, this might be how your clients talk, I don't know. Nice to have, look at this big orange fire. Yes, it's nice to have. Oh, that's nice, like that. Adds real value, here's the gray bar. Okay, this is where advisors get a bit upset about things. Helps me sell more policies. This kind of puce-coloured thing here. Helps me sell more policies. Interestingly, second medical opinion service does help. Mental health counselling does help, and we will see definitely, this line will definitely increase. I'm predicting that. Virtual GP services post-COVID, I reckon we'll see a lot less of this orange and a lot more of the grey. These are things that people value. So what is not working then? If this is working, what's not working? Ooh, that works. Yay. Oh. Neil Liversidge is the principal of West Riding Financial Services. He's a financial advisor. He's a very good financial advisor, actually. That's not him, by the way. Just personally, I don't know of anyone who's ever used such services. Coming again back to Rob's point, are advisors having conversations with their clients? Are you actually saying to your clients, have you noticed these support services? Have you thought about them? It's time to review your policy. Do you just give them a list of things? Oh yeah, your policy comes with this, read the stuff. Because if you're not having conversations, and actually, should I ask Neil Liversidge, hey, have you actually had a conversation with them about it? I know that's a kind of a good conversation for a journalist to have, isn't it? To ask those questions. Okay, I see what I did there. Right, so yeah, I'm going to go back to him and ask him why. Why haven't you had conversations with your clients? Maybe that's a question you should ask yourself. I think part of the problem is that we need to move away from those orange bars, the nice to haves, right? Clearly, it's coming up to Christmas. We all get presents that people think are nice to have. I have, sitting at my home, like this giant fluffy hedgehog. It's a foot warmer, and it requires six, I kid you not, AA batteries, and it didn't come with them either, to operate. Why have I got that? I don't want it. I don't need it. My mother thought it was a nice to have. You're laughing, but, you know, give me your address. I'll send it to you. You can have it, right? At mother-in-law's, my mother-in-law's not too bad, but last Christmas she gave me a ceramic drag cat. I don't understand. It might have been a self-portrait of me, I don't know. Look, part of the problem is that support services are called add-ons. It's something that comes with the policy. It's like a toddler getting a pot of glitter and just throwing it at a painting. I know, I've got a toddler and I've got loads of those paintings. You can't just throw things at it and hope it'll stick and hope that clients care about it, because they don't. And I think this has led to providers just whacking things on, the next big thing onto the policies, and not really caring about an individualistic and tailored approach. What do clients actually need? What they actually benefit from? We've heard amazing stuff here from Krysalis. This is the sort of thing that people actually really need. Families need this kind of support. Talk it up with your clients. Explain it to them. You know, don't just, and providers, please stop just whacking things on because you think they're nice to haves. Right, okay, this ain't QVC, right? I don't want a beach towel with my 13 set of knives. I want the knives. For reasons I'm not going to go into now. Maybe I will. All right, but this is a scattergun approach, and okay, you need to approach this with a holistic view of the product. You know, I think, again, the lack of communication is an issue, and we need to focus on that if we want to improve things for tomorrow's consumer. But, you know, communication is such a big problem. Advisors need to communicate better. Providers need to communicate better. You need to be asking your clients what actually matters to you. You need to be using all that data you've got. You know, right, you've got lots of data. Are you actually using it? Have you got too much data? Focus on what's really important to the client. Another big thing that I spoke to an advisor about, he says, well, my clients do like it, comes with their policy, but the trouble is each individual support service comes with either a different app that you have to download, or a different login, or you go to a website and then you input all your new details into a little portal, or you have to have a telephone banking password. I mean, my gosh, there is nothing more stressful than trying to log into your stress management app and not finding the password, okay? Trust me, okay, this is what I need the NICE for, right? Some providers are doing it right. One portal, you click through, and then you've got all the access to the support services under there, and you don't need extra passwords. 5 minutes, that's stressful, right? Another reason I need the knives. So how do we change? Well, personalization. Again, this is a really important thing, okay? I've been speaking to Oliver Werneyer, he's the chief executive of Inburst Payments. Consumers want more immediate value. They want services beyond a simple insurance product. Okay, if you're just simply throwing free things at point of use, it's not going to fool anyone. Right, so here about thinking about change, right? Change? How many insurance providers does it take to change a light bulb? Change? Right, okay, that was for Phil. Right, okay. So let's think about stop plastering support services onto policies. Start thinking strategically. Think about how the user interacts and accesses these. Now, what if you take off just selling these things as a value add and embed them into a policy or repackage the policy? Why not call it a well-being policy or a well-being package that incorporates protection? I know it's a bonkers statement. You know, think about it. We've got this overall sort of biopsychosocial model of health here with the 4 pillars of well-being. I don't know why some of them go up and the others go down, but anyway, maybe because financial well-being is always going down, especially if you're a journalist. What if they became wellness policies that did everything, and your protection element sits here, but you also have your emotional well-being, your support, your counselling, physical well-being, rehabilitation services, social well-being, more mental health counselling, more help with prescription services. You know, I know Kevin earlier pointed to people having, like, they do want insurance fraud. You know, there is insurance fraud. But let's face it, I don't want income protection policy simply so I can get my arms hideously mangled in a printer and go, oh, great, now I can claim on my IP. It doesn't really work that way. I want insurance as a protection should something bad happen. But actually, while I'm waiting for that bad thing to happen or hoping that it doesn't happen, what about now? I would like mental health counselling. I'd like access to GP services. This is important to people. Maybe rethink your payment models. You know, maybe instead of giving people a voucher to go and shop at Whole Foods, you go back to that question of, yeah, can I give them a discount on their premiums as part of this? And maybe if they have spent £200 at Whole Foods, and if anyone has, certainly not journalists, but then they come back and their premium has gone down by £20. That's pretty nice. Nice little discount there. Now, what about short-term insurance? Rob alluded to this, and here's something. Okay, this is very personal. What if, look at this, what if you had a short-term insurance model, maybe a PMI-style product, that enabled families to go to, or enabled someone going through fertility problems to get a letter from their GP specialist, which says, you need to support us, maybe over 1, 3, or 5 years. You can choose to buy it. Maybe that can add up to maybe £2,000 a year towards the cost of consultations, complete with access to virtual GPs, support services such as the fertility network, covering the cost of drugs and offering a prescription delivery service to the house. These support services actually exist. The insurance package that can come with them doesn't. Maybe that's something to think about. You know, I'm sure that something can be developed. Today's clients need this. It's not available. It's too late for me. I'm just shooting dust down there now. Anyway, it doesn't matter to me. But, you know, work on developing this for tomorrow's clients. And certainly, you know, maybe follow, there are some providers, Aviva offices as part of their corporate PMI, as an add-on that employers can choose. Yeah, of course, it might increase the group premium, but only by what, 10p per person? So actually, you know, think about it. I mean, and if it stops Dave in accounts banging on about his low sperm count while you're trying to eat a chicken mayo sandwich, got to be a winner in my book. Anyway, I don't know, just a thought. Conclusion. Yeah, you'll be very happy about this, Kevin. If you have got any questions, you can always ask the panel, not me, so that's good. But necessity is the mother of invention. That's why Chik was invented, because people saw the necessity for it. There is a need to help reduce the burden on the NHS, as people have said. The pandemic has shown us that the NHS might not always be there for your client tomorrow. There's a growing need to help families with medical expenses relating to medical conditions not covered by traditional IP or PMI. There's a clear need, highlighted by behavioural patterns, for virtual GP, mental health counselling and prescription services, as well as ongoing rehabilitation and other support. So highlight these, communicate better, explain to your clients and potential clients what these can do. And maybe you will find that that little yellow bar becomes much greater. These things can help you sell policies, and it can help deliver real value to the consumer. And maybe just stop thinking of these as add-ons. Okay, add-ons is such a horrible word. Can we just call them what they are? Support services, value-added services, and then package these products in a consumer-friendly way. Now, look, this is just what financial advisors have said to me, mixed in with some of my own research and a lot of panic. But quite frankly, I think the appetite is out there to do something new. It just requires someone with the guts to do it. And I'd really like to see if maybe tomorrow one of you guys are going to be doing that. Thank you. That's it.
And finally, a Pacific Life Re double act for you. Kuen is a product development director at Pacific Life Re, where he joined in 2016. He's responsible for working with clients to develop new and innovative products. An actuary by trade, Kuen has extensive experience having worked for a number of life insurances and in consultancy. Richard works in business development at Pacific Life Re, responsible for managing some of their key client partnerships and supporting efforts to help grow the market. Richard also brings lots of protection product and market experience, having worked for both insurers and consulting prior to joining Pacific Life Re. A round of applause for our final speakers, if you please.
Thanks, Joe. So the first thing I'm going to say is, as an actuary, I've never felt that I've had too much control. So I just wanted to put that out before we start. So post-pandemic product development and the future of value-added services, quite a large topic for 15 minutes, but we're going to give it a real go. So I'm going to start by sort of exploring some of the key themes that might impact customer needs in the context of product development. And then I'm going to hand over to Richard, and he's going to give you a taster of some primary customer research that's hot off the press that we've just conducted. And then it's back to me just to see how these services might develop in the future. And we've got a strong steer from Simoney there about what might be needed there. So I think the three themes I'm going to look at are economic, societal, and product. So let's dive straight in on the first one of that. The first one is economic. So about 18 months ago, a year ago, people were still talking about sort of things like recession, and now they're much more likely to be talking about supply chains and also inflation. So inflation has come back just like it's going to be like the 70s again with the candles and the bins not being emptied, I think. Yes, I am that old. But I think in inflation, you know, what could this mean? So I think the first thing that would strike us is this actually an opportunity? Is this an opportunity for advisors to go back to the clients to see if the sum assured or the benefit amounts sort of still meet the needs? And is it also time to start talking about that word that people have forgotten now, indexation? Is that going to be back in vogue? Another thing is that the country has spent a shed load of money during the pandemic, and the prospect is there's going to be a lot more money spent as well on social care, and that's going to lead to a massive fiscal tightening or increasing taxes in the vernacular for you and me and our customers. Another thing that's been talked a lot about are the new inequalities. So in general terms, and this doesn't apply to everybody, the rich have got richer and the poor got poorer during the pandemic. And it's useful to think about, well, what does this mean for our industry? Will it mean that we have more potential customers, fewer potential customers, or could they just be sort of different customers or customers in different customer segments? And then overall, what's the impact on new business? Is it a simple equation, as actuaries like simple equations, that, you know, if inflation goes up 5%, then all our new business is going up 5%? Or are some of these new inequalities and the increase in taxes, is that going to sort of nibble away at that or even sort of send it lower? The next theme I'm going to explore is societal, and I do confess I missed the trick. I mean, listen to Peter Hamilton this morning. I missed a major societal trend, anarchic uprising, but I guarantee, Peter, I will add that on next time I do this talk. But again, sort of when we think back about a year, sort of 18 months ago, we was talking about the future being one of remote working, and one of those companies was Google. So that's the headline from them. They were saying that any job in Google could be done remotely if people wanted it. So they've now backtracked on that, and now the story they're selling is every job could be hybrid if that's what people want. But I've kept the headline. It's cached in Google, so they can't deny it. And this is the trend that people are going. The people are now talking more about hybrid, but it's going one step further now. So we're now seeing sort of certain pundits predicting that actually, we might not be able to see the end of the pandemic, but some people think that if that ever happens, people will go back to 5-day working weeks in the office. And I think what's at stake is the degree of working from home and what that looks like. And in terms of product impact, I think probably it's income protection that it matters most. Just because, just from my personal experience, I might not be well enough to commute and get on a train to get to work, but I can just about roll out of bed and crawl into my office, which is about 1 metre. The door's 1 metre away from my bedroom. So I think that has a real impact on that particular product. And then on to the product itself. Back in May, the FCA mandated premium flexibility for people in financial difficulty with COVID, and the industry was brilliant at getting that done. Well, I guess they had to, as FCA said so, but brilliant at getting that out. And in the end, it wasn't used as much as some people sort of feared, but it was there. I think a second point I'll make is Joe and Kevin have encouraged us to be controversial where it warrants it, but this is as controversial as I'm going to get. I am working for a reinsurer. And the controversy is vaccination status. Could that ever be used as a rating factor? So we've seen glimpses at this. So one insurer in South Africa has sort of talked about differentiating. We've had sort of group health insurers in the US talking about it as well. That's slightly different because it's actually the employer who pays the premium rather than the customer itself. But it's highly controversial. Hand on heart, I can't really see it happening in the UK, or it would take a brave insurer or reinsurer to introduce that. And then we talked a lot today about long COVID. How long is long COVID? No one knows. We've heard from Stephanie this morning. It's something that we're beginning to see sort of claims pick up. So one group IP provider sort of released some statistics to show that. There's also evidence throughout the world that in severe cases of long COVID, there is long-term organ damage. So what does that mean for the needs of our products? There's an increased need. What does it mean for claims? There's increased claims potential in cost. So that's something we also need to watch out for in product development going forward. And then I think the last point is the value-added services, which is a theme of the talk, is that we see that as something that's going to be an increase in battleground for product development. For two reasons. One is pandemic-related. We've just seen a greater focus in the protection industry about sort of short-term and immediate health needs of customers rather than just the long-term product. And the second thing, I guess, for good or bad, value-added services is a ready-made platform for innovation. It's short-term. You can just do things quickly, try new things, see if they work, and see if they don't work. But one of the things that we strongly believe in is that these services have to meet a customer need and be relevant for customers. So I think that's a good point to hand over to Richard, and I get to sit down.
That's good. All right, so yeah, I'm sure we've all got views on value-added services in this room, but what do customers think? So we wanted to get a view of that, and we carried out some consumer research. We surveyed 1,000 people across the UK. Half of them were existing customers of protection, and the other half said that they would consider protection in the future. So starting off with appeal, the majority of customers said yes, value-added services in general are appealing. You know, not overly surprising, I think you'll agree, but it was interesting to see that actually there were 19% of people that said it was unappealing. So let's look at that. So there were two reasons that came through. One was around cost, concern that it's just going to push up the cost of premiums. And also a little bit of cynicism creeping through. People worry that this is just a clever way for insurers to increase premiums. So going back to that theme of trust that we looked at earlier on this morning. And the other kind of factor was customers just not seeing value in these services. They don't expect to use them. They just want straightforward, basic, cheap cover. That's fair enough. So I think the takeaway for us is, it's not universal appeal, but nonetheless, the majority of customers do find some appeal in these services. So appeal is one thing, but when it comes to actually buying, does it make a difference? Of course, price is the most important factor we always say. Well, that's also what customers say too. 41%, sorry, the numbers have shrunk here. 41% of people said that price was the most important factor when buying protection, followed by comprehensiveness of cover and brand reputation. So the kind of big three that we tend to talk about. Value-added services were fourth, so 17% of people, though, said that it was the most important factor when buying protection. So actually not too bad considering we're talking about the most important factor here. If we dig a bit deeper, we found that it varied depending on the customer type. So customers who bought through an advisor, that increased. About a quarter of those customers did say that it was the most important factor. So perhaps the advisors are using them as a tool in conversations, as a tangible benefit to point to through their protection policy. It was interesting to see that also more affluent customers, the ones in the AB group there, if you can see it, younger customers and those with families also saw more value in them. So that's quite useful for us to bear in mind in terms of who best to have these conversations with. And although we say price is really important, we also asked whether people would pay more for these value-added services. About half of customers said that they would. So that price question is perhaps not quite so black and white. Actually, if you can demonstrate real value, they will pay more. So perhaps value should be equally important as price itself. However, awareness is low. Looking at existing protection customers only 18% said that they definitely had a value-added service policy, service on their policy. So that's not really good enough when we know that I think every major provider now has some form of value-added service on their policy. So there's definite challenge there to raise awareness, and perhaps some of this is because they're only available on kind of newer policies, and perhaps we need to make them available to in-force clients as well. The challenge though is there's so many, as we've discussed, there's so many to talk about. Which ones do we focus on? So we asked customers which ones were appealing. And interestingly, the most appealing ones consistently were virtual GP services, mental health support, and health checks across all different types of customer segment. So if you're going to have a conversation, my recommendation would be to focus on those ones. And they may be more appealing perhaps of what we've gone through the pandemic. It's kind of raised the value of those in particular. But the elephant in the room is, are these services actually providing value? Are people using them, and what's the experience like? So this nice little graph here, what we're looking for is for most of these services to be in the top right-hand quadrant. Good usage, good experience. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a mixed picture, as you might expect. And to pick out a couple of things here, virtual GP services, they're in the top right-hand quadrant. Really well used, really good experience. So this is no doubt a consequence of the pandemic. People have struggled to access their own GP. They've used these services and it's been a great experience. I think a real highlight of the protection industry, we've kind of really done well in this respect to demonstrate value to clients. And maybe we can use that as a platform to build on. A couple of other things, websites and portals where customers can make changes to their policies and the details. High usage, but really poor experience. These are some of the sort of hygiene factors that we really should be doing well, but we're not. So that's an area where I think we need to focus. And finally, in these little orange dots, these are grouped together as some of the preventative services. So things like health checks, fitness programs, and nutrition consultations. These are generally in the top left-hand quadrant. So where you've got low usage, perhaps because of awareness or there's just not as much prevalence in the market, but there's a really good experience. People are really getting value from those when they use them. So an opportunity to kind of build on this real positive story there around prevention. So to sum up from our research, a real good start, I think, in terms of rolling out value-added services across the market, but definite room for improvement. So if you want to give it a grade, maybe a B+. We need to do more to raise awareness and to improve usage of some of these services. We need to improve the user experience. And maybe we need to be actually braver and remove some of these things too, to make sure that we don't have too many and going back to that point of complexity. So lots of food for thought, but we think generally there's an awful lot more value that these services can add to more customers in the market. So I'm just going to hand back to Kuen to wrap up.
Right, so let's cut to the chase. So, how might these services develop? I think it's useful to sort of think about sort of different ways that these services are delivered. So, I guess the first one is you could pay for it with an explicit added charge. That's great because it meets a customer need, otherwise they wouldn't buy it. It's engaging for the same reason, and it's flexible. You can have it or not have it. Most of the ones we see, though, are free, and as Robert sort of alluded to earlier, they're free, but effectively they're included in the price. And here you've got two sort of equal and opposite problems. If there's too little usage, all right, you might get a marketing benefit, but it probably hasn't met its stated purposes if no one's actually availing themselves of the service. And then you've got the opposite problem, is too much usage. And that sort of undermines the financial viability of this free included in the price service. You either have to sort of reduce the value of the service in some way or increase the pricing. So I guess having looked at those first two ways of delivery, that ideally the holy grail would be, what if the service was in some way sort of self-funded? And that could be produced by, for example, a service that produced better health outcomes, which sort of had a positive feedback loop, which sort of effectively paid for itself. And I think that's that to us is the ideal, this virtuous cycle, if you like. But it also brings with it some, it's not that easy. It brings with it some problems. So, for example, even if you know that something produces a better health outcome, how much of a better health outcome does it produce? Does it actually pay for itself, or does it go nowhere near to doing that? And then also, if you do see the data coming through, and the data might take years and years and years to come through, how do you know that was as a consequence of that added value service, or was it just a general trend? And it's certainly not the case that you can do sort of randomized controlled trials to see what it is, like a Head and Shoulders. You use Head and Shoulders on one side of the head and see if the dandruff goes away. So you haven't got many options to really understand even what the data says. And then I think a final point, which has again been alluded to earlier, is that we've got a long-term product and a short-term service that isn't contractual, it isn't guaranteed. It's something that that can be taken away by the insurer, and it's not necessarily something that will last the full term of the policy. So I think that those are the sort of key issues around that. So just to wrap up on the final thoughts and really just to sort of distill what we've been saying today, I think that the pandemic has sort of focused the industry on sort of the more immediate and changing health needs of customers. We definitely think that value-added services is the new battleground for product development, and that's where we're going to see a lot of the action. And I think the third and final point we want to leave you with is that we're firmly of the belief that a value-added service which has an element of preventative care, that those are the ones that are going to really sort of win in this future battle. And there's two reasons for that. One is customer relevance. It's relevant for the sort of product they're buying, and also a key one, which is all about financial sustainability. So on that note, I just got the 2-minute warning, so I'm ahead of time. I mustn't talk so quickly next time. So thank you very much for listening.
So 3 very interesting, very different talks there, I think you'll agree. And it's good to see some of the engagement on Twitter, not just about heated hedgehog foot warmers, but that's my Christmas list sorted. But all of that engagement means that Protection Review 21 is currently trending number 19 on Twitter in the UK. So well done, all of you, and carry on. So without further delay, it's now time to welcome our panel to the stage. David Jennings has worked in financial services in the insurance market for 25 years with organisations including NatWest, Aviva, Jelf and Sesame Bancorp Group. In June 2019, he moved into the digital health tech sector and joined Dr. Link, then acquired by Health Hero, where he now holds the position of Commercial Director responsible for new business sales and development across the full product and service offering. Alan Lakey has experience at 4 companies in the insurance sector before he escaped to the world of financial advice. Highclere Financial Services was formed in 1991 and CI Expert began in 2012. Rob Harvey works as Protection Product Specialist at Protection Guru, supporting the research and benchmarking of protection products and features. He helps Protection Guru drive product innovation and improvements with insurers whilst engaging with advisors to ensure they have the right tools and resources at their disposal to deliver the best protection advice. And Georgia Destaire is the former head of marketing for Holloway Friendly. In the tradition of last-minute stand-ins, Georgia arrived today not aware that she was going to be part of the panel, but we are very grateful she is, with her 15 years of financial services experience. Please give everyone a warm welcome. So in true Blue Peter style, I have prepared some questions earlier. So I'll start with a question for each of my panel in turn. Is enough done to actually encourage the use and uptake of additional benefits and support services, or are they just a marketing gimmick that clients aren't actually even fully aware of? Who's best placed to signpost these benefits, insurers or advisors?
Well, I think to begin with, I just want to wholeheartedly agree with the points that Simoney made, that actually we need to stop calling these added value services. I think that the whole language that we're using around this needs to fundamentally change, because actually, as has been pointed out at a couple of the presentations, these services are integral to the contract. They are part of the value. If we take a life insurance policy and we strip out those added value services, and I'm selling a life insurance policy, say, to a 25-year-old client, the chances of them ever needing to use that life insurance policy are pretty slim. So the value of that policy without those added value services is simply peace of mind. And I'm not sure many consumers necessarily value peace of mind as much as we'd maybe like. So I certainly think that there needs to be a change in the language. What absolutely shouldn't happen is we end up in a situation where insurers are whacking on a bunch of different things that actually aren't likely to be used. And what I kind of don't want to see, I guess, is that this does become a battleground where insurers are trying to compete, because I think there is a risk then that if that becomes the case, we kind of end up in a situation where more and more things are being added, but it's questionable actually what value they bring for consumers.
Last 2 years has been a seismic shift, I think it's fair to say. COVID, we know, has accelerated the use of these services. It's accelerated the adoption of these services. And we've talked a lot today about trust. It has absolutely started to shift on the trust spectrum as well with these services. One thing we can't forget, though, is when you look at support services, value-added services, we're in a very fortunate position in the UK. We've had the NHS and all the support services that do exist already. So as a consumer, as a patient, there is still a inbred reliance on the NHS and a need to want to support the NHS. However, of course, we're in a world of pandemic at the moment, still in the middle of that. Hopefully we'll find a way out soon. And we're in a position where the NHS has continued to suffer during that time in terms of capacity, in terms of support, and in terms of access to those services. So whilst the NHS has that capacity issue and those challenges, people naturally look for alternative solutions, and they'll look at their insurance contracts. 34% of people avoided booking an appointment with the GP because they pretty much thought the doors were closed. 58% of those people then said that had a negative impact on their health. So during this time, what we're now seeing is people have no choice but to start to look elsewhere if they can't access the NHS.
What could we do, whether it's insurer advisors, other than saying actually it's our responsibility to make sure we have those conversations, but what else can we do out there to be able to make sure clients do know that these still exist and are valuable and are using them when they absolutely need it?
So if you sell somebody a product or a plan or whatever you want to call it, that isn't where your responsibility stops. You know, you have to have a dialogue. You have to continue to build the trust and the relationship. And I think from a provider's perspective, it is very important that you carry on talking to your clients, even if they, haven't claimed or they're not going to claim. You're still there. They're still paying you a premium. So it's very important that our communications, whether it be on social media, whether it be through newsletters, whether it be through, client events, member events, focus groups, whatever, get the message out there, because it could make a massive difference to somebody's life. In my old company, we actually sent out a quarterly newsletter to all our members and reminded them of the value-added services that they had. We always saw an uptick in logons in the registration pages, or people requesting their passwords because they'd forgotten them. And we did see that. So I think the responsibility is that you have to carry on talking to the people that have put their trust in you, and build that relationship and make sure that they do know about these services that can really have a fundamental impact on them and their families.
I've got a policy with a particular insurer, and I engage regularly with it because they contact me regularly. I get emails from them, I get letters every year telling me about which services I've used, which services I could use. There's other insurers out there that I know don't do that. Really, I think it's for insurers to empower advisors to have those conversations with their clients. So supply advisors with the up-to-date information on those policies.
Yeah, it's all very well, but how many advisors out there actually know which clients have these benefits added? We've got some companies which have backdated them to the start of when they started issuing policies. Others say the last 5 or 6 years. How many advisors out there, hand on heart, can say, yep, I know my client's covered, and to what degree? And therein is the problem, which is, again, why I said earlier, it is the responsibility of the insurers to send this information out, and arguably to make sure that they send out a brochure with each policy, which I know some companies don't do. So the reliance then is on the policyholder to go online maybe and look up and see what benefits they may or may not be covered for. It's not good enough, they're not going to do it.
We've had a question from Paul Reed on Twitter. He says he recently redid his phone contract and the network offered him a free gift, Spotify or Disney+. It came as a paid feature after time if he decided that he liked it, and he wonders if this would be a concept that had any merit for value-added benefits.
Situations like that can absolutely get people to try and test it first. But these types of services can have real tangible value all day, every day to people's lives and can impact them truly. So give it free of charge, a few months, fine, some insurers' decisions as to whether they can afford to do that, and then continue to communicate and educate people on the value of them. Then we'll see that shift on it truly impacting people's lives.
I think it's about relevancy as well. So if you go back to Simoney's point, if I think of myself now in my early 40s, like what I need from a value-added services perspective is very different to what I needed when I was 25, 30. So I actually, wholeheartedly agree with it, like an insurance wrapper, which you could then add and take things away. And actually, if I decided that I was willing to pay an extra, I don't know, £10 a month because I can cover my child for X, Y, and Z, then I'd be more likely to do that, because and then I can tailor it. And then, when she finally goes off to university or whatever, I can scale that back. Or, I think you have to, everyone's lifestyle changes. And obviously with the pandemic as well, life has changed dramatically. And what is important to us now may be very different to what was important 2 years ago. And in just my personal situation, I've got different insurance products, and I'm now having to phone my financial advisor and go, well, this has happened and this has happened, so I need to change this product, or I need to change that, or I need access to this. And he's like, oh, well, you can't really do that. You might have to cancel it, and you might have to. And it's like, well, why? Why can't I just have a wrapper which I can then flex according to my life situation and have the right services that suit me at that time? And if I choose to pay a premium for them, then I can. Or if I want to dial it down for a few months, whatever. But there has to be more flexibility and transparency, and I think people need to be able to choose what value-added services fit their lifestyle at that point.
Just to add to that, Joe, I absolutely agree. I mean, it comes back to the point I think Robert made it around this open insurance piece. So how do we use data? How do we use information so that it's portable?
Yeah.
I can flex it and I can modulise it to my needs at whatever stage of life I'm at. And then as you're porting it, we get away from the situation of it's covered, it's not covered, I cancel, I don't.
Yeah.
I just hold those services and wherever I may be in moving it around.
Yeah.
How brave are you going to be? Can the industry be about rethinking and redesigning, reframing actually the purpose of protection insurance?
The plans that are out there haven't undergone any major redesign since they were launched. Critical illness hardly has. Changed its name from dread disease, and that's about it. We've had bits and pieces bolted on, pulled off, adjusted. But I think the truth is that there isn't a new product out there. There isn't a new rethink of a product. With the possible exception of AIG last year, whereby the template remains the same. But I think the reality is that there's a need for a complete product redesign for income protection and for critical illness. I don't think much needs to be done with life insurance. However, when we get the added benefits as well, there is a massive danger that we're overcomplicating things. And it could be that these should be paid for add-ons as opposed to freebies, should we call them, because then they'll be contractual. And secondly, they'll be more valued because you've specifically paid for them, a bit like we now have optional child cover with many insurers. Whether that will happen, probably not in my lifetime.